I still remember that night. The sound of machines in the hospital room, the cold air, the way the fluorescent lights hummed above MIT is burned into my mind like it happened just a moment ago. My son was lying in the hospital bed, pale, weak, barely able to keep his eyes open. His kidneys had failed and he was slipping away faster than anyone wanted to admit. The doctors had been clear. Without a donor, without me stepping forward, he wouldn't survive. And I had made my decision. A father doesn't hesitate when his child's life is hanging by a thread. I was ready to give him my kidney the night before the surgery. I sat by his bedside, holding his hand, feeling the sharp bones beneath his skin. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled the silence like a ticking clock counting down the last seconds we had together. His breathing was shallow, and every rise and fall of his chest made me more determined to go through with it. I told myself tomorrow he will live. Tomorrow he will get my kidney. Tomorrow this nightmare will end. But then came the whisper. It didn't come from the doctors. It didn't come from my son. It came from someone I never expected. My grandson. He leaned close to me, his little hand gripping my sleeve tightly. His face was pale, his eyes wide, and his lips trembling. In a voice so soft that I almost thought I had imagined it, he said, "Grandpa, don't do it. You don't know the truth." At first I froze. My heart skipped. I stared at him, unsure if I had heard correctly. He was just a child. What could he possibly mean by the truth? My mind raced. Fear, confusion, shock, everything hit me all at once. I wanted to ask him. I wanted to demand what he meant, but his eyes filled with tears, and he shook his head. "Please," he whispered again, "don't go into that surgery." The air in the room suddenly felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were closing in. My son's fragile breathing filled the silence. And I felt trapped between the promise I made as a father and the warning of a child who seemed too afraid to speak more. My chest tightened. My mouth went dry. I couldn't move. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying my grandson's words over and over again in my head. Every beep of the machine, every flicker of the light above me, reminded me of the time running out. Tomorrow morning, I was supposed to be on the operating table. Tomorrow morning, I was supposed to save my son. But what if? What if my grandson knew something that I didn't? As dawn broke and the hospital halls filled with the sound of nurses starting their rounds, I sat by the window, staring at the rising sun. The world outside was alive and bright, but inside me, a storm was raging. My hands trembled, my heart pounded, and I knew one thing for certain. Before I let the surgeon's knife touch me, I had to find out what secret my grandson was hiding, because in his frightened eyes, I had seen something, couldn't ignore, and that was when everything began to unravel. The morning of the surgery came faster than I wanted. I had barely closed my eyes all night. The hospital bed they gave me to rest on felt like stone, but it wasn't the hardness that kept me awake. It was my grandson's whisper. His tiny voice echoed in my ears again and again. "Don't do it. You don't know the truth." I still remember that day. How the hospital corridors smelled of antiseptic. How the morning light cut through the blinds in sharp white lines. How every sound, the rolling of carts, the footsteps of nurses, the rustle of paper gowns, felt sharper, heavier, louder. My chest ached, but not from illness. From fear. The doctor entered the room with his usual calm face, clipboard in hand, ready to go over final checks. His voice was steady, reassuring. "Everything looks good. We're on schedule. In a few hours, you'll be prepped and taken into surgery. Don't worry, you're a perfect match. Perfect match." The words should have brought comfort, but instead, they hit me like ice. I looked over at my son, lying pale and frail in the bed. His lips were dry, his skin colorless. And still, when his eyes met mine, there was a faint flicker of hope. A hope I couldn't crush. But then my gaze shifted to the corner of the room where my grandson sat, small, silent, watching everything with wide, fearful eyes. He wasn't fidgeting like children usually do. He wasn't distracted by his toy car or the cartoons on the little tablet we had given him. No, he was staring directly at me, as if trying to speak through his silence. I excused myself when the doctor left. My hands trembled as I motioned my grandson to follow me into the hallway. The corridor was long, empty, the hum of the lights buzzing above us. My heart raced. I bent down so I was eye level with him. "What did you mean last night?" I whispered. "What truth? Why don't you want me to go through with the surgery?" His little hands twisted together. His lips trembled. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he glanced nervously at the door to his father's room and leaned closer. "Grandpa, it's not what you think. Dad doesn't want your kidney." The words made no sense. I blinked, stunned. "What are you talking about?" "Of course he does. His life depends on it." My grandson shook his head violently. His voice cracked. "No, he said something. I heard him," he said. "If you give him your kidney, it won't change anything. He said he doesn't deserve it." My chest tightened. My breath caught. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My son had said that. My son, the boy I raised, the man I had promised to protect, believed he didn't deserve to live. The thought made my blood run cold. Why would he say that? I whispered. My voice was barely audible. Tears welled in my grandson's eyes. "Because of the secret, Grandpa. The one nobody talks about." "The one you don't know?" A chill ran down my spine. The secret. There it was, again, the thing hidden in his words, in his eyes, in his fear. I grabbed his little shoulders gently, trying not to scare him, but needing to know. "What secret? Tell me now, please." But before he could answer, the sharp squeak of shoes echoed in the hallway. A nurse appeared, smiling politely. "Sir, we'll need you in pre-op soon. The anesthesiologist is ready." I froze, caught between two worlds, one of sterile hallways and medical certainty, and another of whispers, secrets, and a fear I couldn't name yet. My grandson's grip on my sleeve tightened. His face went pale as the nurse waited. My grandson leaned in one last time and whispered words that made my knees weaken. My breath vanish and my world collapse into questions I wasn't ready for. "Grandpa, Dad lied about why he's in the hospital." I still remember that moment. The nurse's polite smile, the smell of disinfectant in the hallway, the bright light shining above us. On the outside, it was just another hospital morning. But inside me, everything was falling apart. My grandson's last whisper kept stabbing my mind. Dad lied about why he's in the hospital. I felt the air leave my lungs. My son, lying frail in that bed. The son I had raised with my own hands. The son I was about to give a piece of myself to. Lead. Why would he lie? What could be so terrible that he'd rather die than tell me the truth? The nurse repeated herself softly. "Sir, we need to prep you now." I forced a nod, though my body felt heavy as stone. My grandson clung to my sleeve, his small fingers digging into my arm, as if he was trying to anchor me from walking into something dangerous. I looked into his eyes, filled with fear and desperation, and I whispered, "We'll talk later. Promise me." He nodded, but his lips trembled. Inside the pre-op room, the atmosphere shifted. The lights were brighter, almost blinding. The coldness of the steel table bit through the thin hospital gown I was given. Machines beeped in rhythm, reminding me that time was running out. My mind screamed for answers, but all I could hear was the doctor's calm voice explaining the process. He sounded confident, routine, like this was just another day for him. But for me, it was a war inside my chest. When the anesthesiologist entered, his mask hiding half his face, I felt my pulse quicken. The sharp smell of alcohol swab, the sting of the force sliding into my vein, it was all too real. My hands shook, not from fear of the surgery itself, but from the truth I didn't yet know. "Try to relax," the doctor said, but how could I? Relaxing was impossible when my grandson's words burned inside me. My son lied. Why? As they prepped me, I heard footsteps outside the curtain. Voices, and then his voice. My son's voice. Weak but determined. "I need to talk to my father," he said. The curtain slid back slightly, stood there pale and trembling, leaning on a nurse for support. His eyes met mine, and in that moment, I knew he was hiding something. I had raised him long enough to see guilt in his face. Dad, his voice cracked. Before you do this, there's something I should have told you. My heart thundered in my chest. The nurse frowned, about to object, but the doctor lifted a hand. Let him speak. Sometimes words matter before surgery. I looked at my son, trying to steady my breathing. What is it? I whispered. He hesitated. His eyes darted to the doorway where my grandson now stood silently, his small frame barely visible. The boy's face was pale, his eyes wide, waiting. My son's lips parted. He swallowed hard. I'm not here just because my kidneys failed naturally. I did this to myself. The room spun. My blood went cold. For a second, I couldn't process his words. The doctor's pen froze mid-note. Even the machines seemed quieter. I gripped the edge of the bed, my voice shaking. What do you mean? You did this to yourself? My son's eyes filled with tears. Dad, I wasn't honest. You don't know the real reason I'm here. The truth was on the edge of his tongue. I could feel it, but just as he began to speak, alarms blared. A nurse rushed in, panic in her voice. Another patient just down the hall had gone into cardiac arrest. The staff bolted toward the emergency, leaving us hanging in silence. My son looked at me, lips trembling, words unspoken. And I knew whatever secret he carried was darker than I could imagine. I still remember that day. The piercing sound of the alarm echoing down the hospital hallway, the rush of nurses pushing, carts, the hurried footsteps of doctors sprinting past me. For a moment, the entire hospital felt like it was shaking. But inside that small pre-op room, my world was shaking for a different reason. My son's words still clung to the air like a storm cloud. I did this to myself. I sat frozen on the edge of the bed, the force still in my arm, my hospital gown sticking to my skin with sweat. My heart raced, not from fear of surgery anymore, but from fear of the unknown truth. What could he mean? Why would he say that? My son, my own flesh and blood, was destroying himself. The curtain swung back again. My grandson peeked in, his little face pale, his eyes searching mine. He didn't say a word, but I saw the same message in his eyes that he had whispered to me before. Don't do it. He knew something. He had always known that. My son struggled closer, one hand gripping the wall for balance. His voice shook, but his words carried a weight I had never heard from him before. Dad, you don't understand. You think this surgery will save me, but it won't. It can't. Because what's wrong with me? It isn't just my kidneys. My breath caught, my voice cracked. Then what is it? Tell me. He lowered his head. His shoulders trembled. I've been hiding something from you for years. Something I was too ashamed to say. I didn't want you to look at me differently. I felt my throat tighten. The antiseptic smell of the room turned sharp, suffocating. Son, I whispered, my voice breaking. I don't care what it is. You're my child. Tell me. He lifted his eyes to mine, and I saw its fear, guilt, and something else, something darker. His lips parted, but just as he began to speak, the doctor returned, pulling the curtain wide with brisk movements. His voice was firm. We have to continue, sir. We're ready. The delay can't go on much longer. I looked at my son, desperate. Tell me now, what's secret? The doctor frowned. This isn't the time. He needs rest. You need to be prepped. But my son grabbed my wrist with surprising strength, his grip trembling but fierce. His eyes locked onto mine, and in a voice that cracked under its own weight, he whispered, Dad. I'm not the man you think I am. I've been living a lie. Before I could respond, before I could even breathe, the doctor forced him gently back toward his bed. Nurses swarmed in, checking monitors, adjusting machines, trying to move me toward the operating table. The moment slipped through my fingers, leaving only those haunting words behind. My grandson stood frozen at the door, tears running down his small cheeks. And in that silence, broken only by the steady beep of machines, I realized one thing: this surgery wasn't just about saving my son's life. It was about uncovering the truth he was too afraid to tell. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for what I was about to hear. I still remember that night. How the hospital halls grew quiet again after the rush. How the beeping of machines felt louder than ever. And how my heart pounded so hard that I thought it might break my chest open. My son's words kept circling in my mind like vultures. I'm not the man you think I am. I've been living a lie. What lie? What truth could be so heavy that even on the edge of death he struggled to say it? The nurses tried to calm me, tried to reassure me that everything was fine, but nothing felt fine. My body was shaking, my palms sweating, my throat dry. I looked over at my grandson, who sat quietly in the corner, his little eyes red from crying. He wouldn't look at me. He wouldn't look at anyone. When the doctors left us alone again, I leaned forward in my bed and whispered, "Son, I need to know. If you want me to save you, you have to tell me. What are you hiding from me?" For a long moment he just stared at the floor, his chest rising and falling unevenly. Then, in a voice so low I had to lean close to hear it, he said, "Dad, my kidneys didn't just fail. I destroyed them." The words cut through me like a blade. My mouth went dry. Destroyed them. What do you mean? He looked up at me with tears streaming down his cheeks. I did it to myself. I knew what I was doing, and now I don't deserve your kidney. My heart twisted. My mind screamed in confusion. Why would you do that to yourself? He didn't answer right away. His lips trembled. His gaze drifted toward the door, where my grandson was sitting so still, his small hands clenched tight. It was as if the boy already knew. Finally, my son spoke, his words broken. "Because I was hiding something from you. Something I never wanted you to find out. I thought if I punished myself, if I carried the pain, maybe I wouldn't have to tell you." I grabbed his arm, my voice cracking. "Tell me what it is. You're my son. I don't care what you've done. I just want the truth." But he shook his head, tears falling fast now. "You say that now, Dad, but when you hear it, you'll never look at me the same way again." The silence that followed was unbearable. The steady beep of the monitor echoed like a clock, counting down the seconds of my patience. My throat burned with words I couldn't say. My grandson looked up at me suddenly, his face pale, his voice trembling. "Grandpa," he whispered, almost choking on the words. "It's about me." My blood froze. The air in the room turned heavy, crushing. My eyes shot to him, my chest tightening. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely more than a breath. He looked at me, tears streaming down his small face, and whispered words that made the room tilt. That made my entire world collapse beneath me. Dad's secret? It's about me. I still remember that moment. How the room seemed to shrink around me. How the air grew heavy and hard to breathe. And how my grandson's tiny voice cut through me sharper than any knife. Dad's secret. It's about me. For a second, my world tilted. I gripped the side of the bed to steady myself, my chest pounding, my throat tight. My grandson was just a child, innocent, fragile. What secret could possibly tie him to his father's sickness, to this nightmare we were drowning in? I leaned toward him, my voice shaking. "What do you mean? What does your father's secret have to do with you?" His lips quivered. His little fists clenched. He glanced at his father, then back at me, his eyes filled with tears too heavy for a boy his age. He whispered, "I heard him. I heard what he said when he thought no one was listening. He said he didn't deserve my love. He said he failed me." My chest tightened. I turned my eyes to my son, whose face had gone pale, whose body shook as if he had been exposed. "Failed you? How? What is he talking about?" My grandson hesitated, biting his lip, looking like he was carrying the weight of a mountain. His eyes darted around the room as if he was afraid someone else might hear. Finally, he whispered, "Because of what happened. The night Mom left." The words hit me like thunder. The night Mom left. My daughter-in-law, his wife, the boy's mother, had vanished years ago. She had walked out of their lives one evening and never returned. No explanation. No goodbye. Just a hole in their family that never closed. I stared at my son, my voice trembling with 1,000 questions. What about that night? What happened? He looked at me with hollow eyes, guilt dripping from every tear. Dad, I should have told you a long time ago. That night wasn't what you thought. She didn't just leave. She left because of me. The room spun. The monitor beside me beeped faster, matching my racing heartbeat. My son's face was etched with shame. My grandson's face with sorrow. I whispered, "What did you do? What happened that night?" His lips parted, but before the words came, a nurse suddenly entered again, cheerful and oblivious. "Sir, we really must move you soon. The surgery can't be delayed much longer." I clenched my fists. The interruption felt like a knife twisting into my chest. I looked at the nurse, then at my son, then at my grandson. I couldn't let this moment slip away again. I shook my head firmly. "Not until he tells me." The nurse frowned, but before she could protest, my son's weak voice cracked through the silence. His words came out broken, trembling, but each one carved into me like stone. "Dad, that night she didn't leave because she wanted to. She left because she discovered what I had done, and it destroyed everything." My breath caught. The world around me blurred. My grandson buried his face in his hands, sobbing quietly, and in that moment, I realized the truth was about to break us all. I still remember that day, how the hospital lights flickered faintly above us, how the faint sound of monitors filled the silence, and how my son's broken voice forced me into a place I never wanted to go. His words shook me. She didn't leave because she wanted to. She left because of me. I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. My throat was dry, my hands trembling. "What do you mean? What happened that night?" My son closed his eyes as if the memory itself was too heavy to hold. His voice cracked as he spoke. It was late. She had just put him, he glanced at his own son, my grandson, to bed. We were arguing again, like we always did. About money, about stress, about the pressure I carried. But that night, it went further than it ever had before. My stomach tightened. My breathing slowed, heavy, uneven. "What do you mean, further?" His face twisted in pain. "I lost control, Dad. I said things I should never have said. Things a husband should never say." She looked at me with this fear in her eyes. Not anger. Not frustration. Fear. I swallowed hard, bile rising in my throat. "You mean you hurt her?" His voice dropped to a whisper, trembling. "Not with my hands, but with words that cut deeper than any blade. Words that broke her spirit." She looked at me like I was a stranger, like she didn't know me anymore. She packed a bag that night, and she walked out. I leaned back, my chest heavy. The image haunted me, her, walking out into the night. My grandson waking up the next morning to find his mother gone. My son left standing in the ruins of what he had destroyed with his own mouth. But something still didn't add up. Something in his eyes told me there was more. Much more. I leaned forward, my voice trembling. "If it was just words, why do you say she left because of what you did? Why are you in this hospital now, destroying yourself? There's more you're not saying." My son's face went pale. He turned his head toward the window, his lips quivering. His hands shook as he clutched the blanket, and then, caught it in a broken whisper, he said, "Because she didn't just leave us that night, Dad. She left because of what she found. Something I was hiding. Something I never wanted anyone to know." The silence after his words was deafening. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above. My grandson's soft sobs filled the space. I felt my skin crawl. My voice came out ragged. "What did she find?" He looked back at me then, his eyes hollow, his face streaked with tears. His lips parted as if the words themselves were too heavy to carry. And just as he began to speak, his monitor suddenly beeped louder, his pulse spiking, his breathing ragged. Nurses rushed in again, pulling me back, forcing me away from him. I shouted, "Tell me! Tell me what she found." But my son's lips only formed one word before the chaos swallowed him. A word that froze the blood in my veins. Letters. I still remember that night. The way my son's weak voice broke through the chaos. The way the single word hung in the air like smoke. Letters. The nurses swarmed around him, checking his vitals, adjusting machines, speaking in hurried voices I barely heard. My mind was locked on that one word, repeating over and over, gnawing at me like a shadow I couldn't see but could feel everywhere. Letters. I stood frozen, gripping the edge of the bed so tightly my knuckles turned white. My grandson moved closer, clutching my arm, his small body shaking. His face was pale, his lips pressed tight, as if he already knew what those letters meant. I bent toward him, my voice hoarse. What letters? Do you know what he's talking about? His eyes flickered with fear. He hesitated, then slowly nodded. I saw them once, in a box under his bed. Mom found them first. That's the night everything changed. I breath caught. What kind of letters? His little hands trembled as he whispered letters to someone else. The words struck me like lightning. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, my legs weak beneath me. Someone else? I whispered, struggling to form the words. He nodded, tears streaming down his cheeks. Not Mom, someone else. He was writing to her, for months, maybe years. I don't know who she was, but when Mom found them, she cried all night. She said she couldn't stay with him anymore, and then she was gone. The ground beneath me seemed to collapse. My son, my boy, had betrayed his wife. All this time I had believed she left because she was weak, because she abandoned her family. But the truth was so much darker. She left because she discovered something she couldn't forgive. I turned to my son. His face was twisted in pain, his breathing ragged. Is it true? I demanded, my voice breaking. Were you writing to someone else? He closed his eyes, tears sliding down his pale cheeks. Yes, he whispered. It started as a mistake, but it became more. And when she found the letters, she left. She couldn't look at me the same. My chest felt like it was caving in. Betrayal, shame, the weight of secrets. I wanted to scream, to demand why, to ask how he could destroy everything for a handful of words written to someone else. But I couldn't. My voice caught in my throat. My grandson clung tighter to me. That's why he says he doesn't deserve your kidney, Grandpa. Because he thinks he destroyed everything. Because he knows he hurt all of us. Tears blurred my vision. My son turned his hollow eyes toward me. I don't deserve to live, Dad. I don't deserve your sacrifice. I don't deserve forgiveness. The room spun. My heart thundered. My grandson's sobs filled the silence. And I sat there, broken between love and fury. Between a father's instinct to protect and a man's rage at betrayal. I opened my mouth to speak. To tell him something, anything but, before I could. The door creaked open, and standing there in the doorway was a woman I hadn't seen in years. Her face was pale, her eyes sharp with secrets. Her presence like a ghost returning from the past. It was her, my daughter Law, the wife who had left that night. The woman we thought was gone forever. I still remember that night. The way the air turned cold when the door opened and she stepped inside. For a heartbeat, I thought I was dreaming. My daughter-in-law, the woman I hadn't seen since the night she left, stood there frozen, her hand still gripping the doorframe as if she wasn't sure whether she wanted to come in or run away again. The fluorescent lights of the hospital flickered above her, and her shadow stretched long across the floor. My grandson gasped, his tiny body stiffening against me. His eyes widened, tears welling again. Mom, he whispered, his voice so soft I barely heard it. She looked at him first. Her eyes, red and tired, filled with pain and something deeper, regret, maybe. She took a slow step forward. The sound of her heels echoed in the silence, louder than the machines beeping around us. I felt my knees weaken. My heart raced, a storm of emotions flooding through me: anger, relief, confusion. After all these years of absence, why was she here now? And why tonight, when the truth was finally spilling into the open. My son, pale and weak on the hospital bed, turned his head slowly. His lips trembled as he whispered her name, a name that sounded broken in his mouth. Alina. Her breath caught. She hesitated, her eyes flicking to the floor. I shouldn't be here, she said, her voice shaking. But when I heard what was happening, when I heard you might not make it through the night, I couldn't stay away. Silence pressed heavy. The machines beeped steadily, almost like a cruel countdown. I felt my grip tighten around my grandson's hand, as if holding him tighter would keep all of us from falling apart. Finally, I spoke. My voice was sharp, raw. You disappeared without a word. Do you know what that did to him? To your son? To all of us? Her eyes glistened. She shook her head slowly. I know. And I've carried that guilt every single day. But you don't understand. I didn't leave because I stopped loving him. I left because the truth crushed me. I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. Her voice cracked. She looked at my son, tears rolling down her face. Those letters. They weren't just words. They were betrayal. Every page cut me open. And when I asked you if they meant nothing, you couldn't even lie to me. You just sat there, silent. And in that silence, everything between us died. My son's face twisted with pain, not just from the sickness eating away at him, but from the weight of her words. His chest rose and fell unevenly. I know, he whispered. I know what I did, and I would undo it if I could, but I can't. Elena's hands trembled as she moved closer to the bed, standing over him. For a moment, I thought she might reach out, touch his face, forgive him. But she stopped herself, frozen in hesitation. Her eyes searching his as if looking for the man she once knew. My grandson couldn't hold it anymore. He pulled free from my grip and rushed to her, hugging her legs tightly, his small voice cracking. Mom, please don't go again. Please don't leave me. Her hands covered her mouth as sobs shook her body. She bent down, wrapping him in her arms, rocking him as if trying to make up for years of absence in a single moment. I won't. Not this time. I promise. Stood there, torn apart, watching a family broken by secrets try to piece itself back together in the middle of a hospital room. And just when I thought maybe, just maybe, there was hope, my son's voice broke through the moment. Weak, almost fading, but clear enough to freeze the air. There's more you don't know, he whispered. More than the letters. Something I never told anyone. His voice trailed off and his eyes rolled back. The monitor beside him began to scream with sharp, urgent beeps. And in that instant, everything fell apart again. I still remember that night. The sound of the monitor shrieking, sharp and piercing, tearing through the room like a siren from hell. My heart dropped into my stomach as my son's body convulsed, his face turning pale, his lips trembling as his eyes rolled back, code blue. A nurse shouted, bursting through the door with two others behind her. The room erupted into chaos. Hands pressed buttons, machines came alive. And voices barked orders I couldn't even process. I stumbled back, clutching my grandson against me. His small body shook violently in my arms, his sobs muffled against my chest. Alina stood frozen near the bed, her face as white as a sheet. Her hands pressed to her mouth as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. The doctors swarmed around my son, shouting numbers, calling for injections, preparing the crash cart. The rhythmic thump of chest compressions filled the room, each one hitting me like a hammer to the chest. Stay with us. Keep compressions going. One of the doctors barked. I couldn't move. My knees trembled, my throat closed, my eyes fixed on the fragile body lying there, my son. My boy, the child I once held in my arms the day he was born. And now he was slipping away right before me. And in the chaos, I heard his voice, faint, barely a whisper. But it cut through the noise like a knife, Dad. Listen, I froze. My heart stuttered. His lips barely moved, but the words escaped between shallow breaths. The letters. They're not the whole truth. There's something else. Something dangerous. Before I could lean closer, his body jolted under the electric shock of the defibrillator. The machines beeped wildly. his chest rising and falling as the doctors worked desperately to pull him back. Alina cried out, reaching forward, but a nurse blocked her. "Please, ma'am, step back." She collapsed into the chair, sobbing into her hands, rocking back and forth as if she were losing him all over again. My grandson clung to me so tightly I could barely breathe, whispering, "Please, Grandpa, save him. Don't let him die, please." Time lost all meaning. Seconds stretched into years. My own heartbeat pounded louder than the machine's, and then a sound, a beep, steady, stronger than before. The doctors sighed in relief, one of them wiping sweat from his brow. "He's back. We've stabilized him for now." I nearly collapsed from the weight of it. Relief flooded my chest, but it was laced with terror. Stabilized for now. Those words echoed in my skull. For now meant borrowed time. As the doctors adjusted tubes and set the machines into rhythm again, I looked at my son's face, pale, weak. But his eyes opened again, and they locked on mine with a desperation I had never seen before. "Dad!" He croaked, his voice rasping. "You don't understand. The letters were only the beginning. If anyone finds out what else I hid, none of us will be safe." My blood turned cold. His words clung to me like ice. "None of us will be safe." I leaned closer, my hand gripping his arm. "What do you mean? What did you do?" But before he could answer, his eyes fluttered shut again, his body slumping against the pillows. The machine steadied, but his voice was gone, and in the heavy silence that followed, Elena's tear-streaked face turned toward me. Her voice shook as she whispered, "I know what he's talking about." I still remember that night. The way Elena's voice trembled when she said those words. "I know what he's talking about." The chaos of moments before had faded, but the room was still heavy with fear. The machines beeped in steady rhythm, keeping my son tethered to life. My grandson sat pressed against me, his wide eyes darting between his father and his mother. He didn't understand everything, but he felt the weight of it all. I stared at Alina, my throat dry. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "What do you know?" She looked at the floor, her fingers twisting together as if she was trying to wring the truth out of them. "When I found the letters," she began softly, "I thought they were just an affair. Painful, yes, but human weakness. Something that shattered us, but at least made sense." Her voice cracked. She shook her head. "But then I read more carefully, and I realized those weren't love letters. Not really. They were messages. Instructions, codes hidden between sentences. I thought I was imagining it at first, but the patterns were too clear." I felt my chest tighten. "Codes." She nodded. Her eyes flicked toward my unconscious son. He was involved in something he never spoke of. Every letter I found was addressed to a woman, yes. But inside were pieces of something larger. Coordinates, numbers, warnings, plans. It was as if he was part of something he couldn't tell me about. And when I confronted him, he begged me to forget I had ever seen them. That's why I left. Not just because of betrayal, but because I was afraid. My grandson's little voice broke through the silence. "Afraid of what, Mom?" She turned to him, tears spilling down her face. "Afraid that whoever those letters were really meant for might come after us if they knew I had read them." A shiver ran through me. The steady beeping of the machine suddenly sounded like a countdown. I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was closing in on us. Alina continued, her voice trembling. "There was one name that appeared over and over. At first I thought it was just the woman's name. But when I looked it up later, I realized it wasn't just a person. It was something else entirely. A group, a network. Something dangerous." I leaned closer, my voice low, urgent. "What name?" She hesitated, her lips pressing tight, as if even saying it out loud might bring trouble to our door. Her eyes darted toward the window to the hallway, as if she expected someone to be listening. "Alina," I pressed, my voice breaking with fear. "What name?" Her eyes met mine, full of dread. Slowly she whispered it, and the moment the name left her lips, the lights in the hospital flickered. The machine stuttered, and then, with a sharp pop, the entire room went dark. I still remember that night. The way the lights went out so suddenly that the room fell into complete darkness. The machine sputtered, and then only a faint red glow remained from the emergency backup lights. My heart hammered so loudly I thought it might burst through my chest. My grandson clung to me, trembling. "Grandpa, what's happening?" he whispered, his voice shaking. I held him close, trying to steady my own fear. It's just a blackout," I said, even though deep down, I knew it was far more than that. Alina stood frozen near the bed, her face pale in the dim glow. Her hands were pressed against her mouth, and I could see the terror in her eyes. "They know we're here," she whispered. I froze. Who knows?" Her voice was barely audible. "The people he was involved with, the network. The ones those letters were meant for. I don't know how, but they must have tracked the hospital somehow. That's why I left years ago. That's why I stayed away. And now? They're here." The room was silent except for the faint hum of backup power and my grandson's soft sobs. My mind raced, trying to understand what she meant. Who could possibly come for us inside a hospital? And why now, when my son was so weak he could barely breathe? A sudden noise made all of us jump, a soft click, then a shadow moving just outside the door. My grandson's small hands gripped mine tightly. "Grandpa!" "They're coming," he whispered. I could feel the panic rising, but I had to stay calm. I moved toward my son's bed, feeling along the side in the darkness. His weak body was trembling, hooked to tubes and monitors, helpless. "You're going to be okay," I said, my voice firm even though my heart was screaming. "We're not leaving you." "Not now." Alina's voice shook as she spoke. "We need to hide. If they come in here, they'll take him, and then none of us will get out alive." I looked around the room, trying to find something, anything, that could protect us. My eyes fell on the small emergency cart nearby. Not much, but something. My mind was racing, thinking of ways to block the door, keep the intruders out, anything to buy us time. The shadow moved again. Closer, this time, the soft click of footsteps echoing down the hallway. My grandson buried his face against me, his small body trembling uncontrollably. I swallowed hard. "Stay close," I whispered to both of them. "No matter what happens, we stay together." A sudden sound froze, Mia metallic scraping from the far side of the room. My stomach twisted. Whoever was out there wasn't just searching. They were trying to get in, and then, just as a shadow reached the door, a faint voice called out from the hallway. It was calm, almost too calm. "Come out. We know you're in there. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." My heart stopped. That voice, I knew it. It was a voice I had hoped never to hear again. I still remember that night. The way the shadows at the door seemed to grow taller, thicker, as if they were alive. My heart was hammering so loudly I was certain they could hear it outside. My son lay weak and pale on the hospital bed, connected to machines that beeped steadily, tethering him to life. The voice spoke again, calm, chilling, and unmistakable. "We know you're in there. Step out, or this ends badly." Alina clutched my grandson to her chest. "They know exactly who we are," she whispered, her voice shaking. "They've been watching us for years. Those letters, they were never private. Every word was tracked." I felt the panic rising, but I forced myself to stay calm. My son's life depended on it. I looked down at him. His eyes were half open, filled with fear and guilt. "Dad, if they get me, everything ends," he whispered. I gritted my teeth. "Not if I can stop it. I swear I won't let them take you." The door handle rattled. A shadow appeared in the narrow window, moving closer. My grandson's soft sobs filled the room, and I held him tighter, whispering, "It's okay. We'll survive this." And then they came in. 3 figures dressed in dark uniforms, their faces hidden behind masks. They moved with a silent, terrifying precision. One of them raised a hand, and the voice spoke again, low, deliberate. "You have something that belongs to us. You know it. Hand it over and no one gets hurt." I stepped in front of my son, my fists shaking but determined. "Leave him alone. I shouted. He's sick. He's not capable of anything. The tallest one tilted their head slightly as if amused. Sick or not, he owes us. Those letters were more than words, they were agreements, contracts. And now he has failed. You cannot protect him here. Lena stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong. You won't touch him. You have no right. This is a hospital. Innocent people are here. The intruders paused, their movements deliberate, calculating. They didn't answer, but I could feel the tension thickening, the air suffocating. Every second felt like an eternity. Then my son's weak voice rasped, barely audible over the pounding of my heart. Dad, the letters. They weren't just codes. They hid the location of something dangerous. I never wanted you to know. But now they found me, and they'll stop at nothing to get it. My stomach sank. What location? What are you talking about? He coughed, blood rising at the corner of his lips, and whispered, the letters lead to something bigger than us. Something that could destroy everything. They've been after it, and me, for years. The intruders moved closer. One of them reached toward my son's bed. My chest tightened. I could feel the panic rising in my grandson, who clung to me like a lifeline. And then, in the chaos, my son gasped, his eyes wide. Dad, the key. The key is hidden, in the one place they'll never think to look. Before he could finish, the room shook as a loud bang echoed outside. Lights flickered again. The intruders froze. And in that moment of hesitation, I realized we had one chance. One small, fragile chance to survive, to protect my son, to keep the truth safe. But could we pull it off? Could we escape the network that had been hunting him for years? The room was silent again, the intruders still looming. And the weight of the secret pressed down on us heavier than ever. I still remember that night. The way the shadows in the room seemed to stretch and twist around us as if trying to close in. The intruders were still there, silent and deadly, their masked faces looming over us like predators. My son lay weak on the bed, hooked to machines, barely able to speak. He whispered again, his voice trembling, Dad, the key, the letters. They're connected. You have to find it before they do. My mind raced. Where? Where is it hidden? He coughed violently and blood stained the corner of his lips. The place you'd never look. The one thing everyone overlooked. It's inside the old family safe. Upstairs, the one in the study. You have to get it. Elena's eyes widened. Are you crazy? They'll follow us. We can't leave him here. I shook my head. We have no choice. If they get what he's hiding, none of us will survive. We have to try. We have to risk it. My grandson clung to me tightly, his small hands shaking. Grandpa, please be careful. I nodded, swallowing the fear in my throat. I promise I'll be back. I edged toward the door, keeping low, my heart hammering like a drum. The intruders were still watching, but they didn't move immediately. I had to buy a few precious seconds. Alina whispered to me, her voice barely audible. If you fail, the secret dies with him. Don't let it end like that. I nodded again, and then I ran. The hallway was dark, eerily quiet except for the faint hum of emergency lights. Each step felt like a lifetime. My mind raced as I reached the staircase. Every shadow could hide one of them. Every sound could alert them to our plan. Upstairs, the study door was locked, but my fingers fumbled with the key we always kept hidden behind a painting. I felt my heart racing faster than ever as the lock clicked inside. The safe stood in the corner, silent, waiting. My hands shook as I opened it. There inside was a small, unassuming envelope. No one would ever guess its importance. The letters inside were different organized, coded, and pointing to a single location. A location tied to something powerful. Something dangerous enough that it had haunted my son for years. I grabbed it, clutching it tightly. My stomach twisted with fear and anticipation. We had it, but were we too late? A sudden noise behind me made me spin. The intruders had followed. I could see their shadows moving across the wall. One of them reached for the door handle. I took a deep breath, gripping the envelope. My mind raced for a plan. I had the key. We had a chance, but it was fragile, fleeting, and if we failed, none of us would survive the night. And then, a whisper from behind my shoulder made my blood run cold. Looking for this? I froze. It was my grandson, holding a small device he had found a tracker the intruders had left behind. He held it up, tears streaming down his face, small voice trembling but determined. "They'll never catch us if we destroy this first," Skay said. In that moment, I realized hope wasn't gone. Not yet. But the intruders were closing in faster than I ever imagined, and we were running out of time. I still remember that night. The sound of my grandson's small voice in the dark, the weight of the envelope in my hands, and the terrifying shadows of the intruders closing in around us. Every heartbeat felt like it could be our last. I turned toward the stairs, the envelope clutched tightly against my chest. Alina followed, holding our grandson close. The intruders were fast, silent, but we had something they didn't: knowledge, courage, and the will to protect our family. I whispered to my grandson, "Do exactly as I say. Stay quiet, stay close, and we'll get through this." He nodded, his small hands gripping mine. "I'm ready, Grandpa." We moved quickly, shadows passing over us, every sound amplified in the tense silence of the hospital. Reaching the exit, I realized the emergency doors were locked. My heart sank, but Alina pointed to the fire escape, an old, unused exit we had walked past countless times but never thought we'd need. We ran. My grandson clutched the envelope tightly in one hand and my hand in the other. We descended the fire escape, each step rattling in the cold night air, the distant shouts of the intruders echoing behind us. Finally, we reached the ground. The dark street stretched before us, empty and silent, offering a fragile shield against those who hunted us. I could feel my chest heaving, my lungs burning, but relief washed over me. We were still alive. We didn't stop running until the hospital lights were a distant glow behind us. My son remained behind, hooked to life support, but his final words had given us the path to safety. The letters, the hidden key, the dangerous secret teat was all safe for now. Alina held our grandson close, tears streaming down her face. "We're alive," she whispered. "We made it. All of us." I hugged them both tightly, feeling the weight of the past and the relief of survival crash over me. We had faced betrayal, secrets, danger, and death, and somehow we had survived together. Later, when the police arrived, alerted by the blackout and suspicious activity, they found the intruders gone, vanished without a trace. The hospital had no record of who they were or what they wanted. Only we knew the truth, and my son. He recovered slowly, his health fragile but improving. The letters were gone, destroyed, their dangerous knowledge no longer a threat. The family we thought lost was beginning to heal. As I look back now, I realize how fragile life can be, how fragile trust can be, and yet how strong love is. How one secret can threaten everything, but courage, family, and loyalty can protect even the most dangerous truths. If there's one thing I learned from that night, it's this: never take your family, your loved ones, for granted. Fight for them, protect them, and never let secrets destroy the bonds that truly matter. And to you, my friends, watching this story, if you enjoyed this journey, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because life is precious, and stories like these remind us just how powerful love, courage, and truth can be.